If you're interested in what China's doing in Africa and the Global South, you're going to want to subscribe to the China-Africa Project. We've indexed every major news story going back years, and it's easily searchable by country, topic, or keyword. Plus, we're the only source for daily analysis on all of the big stories related to Chinese engagement in Africa and throughout the developing world. With a subscription, you'll enjoy full access to the site. Plus, you'll get our popular daily email newsletter that comes out every morning at 6 a.m. Washington time. Subscriptions start at just $7 a month for students and teachers and $15 a month for everyone else. To sign up, just go to ChinaAfricaProject.com/subscribe. Once again, that's ChinaAfricaProject.com/subscribe.
The China in Africa podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Africa-China Reporting Project at Wits University in Johannesburg. The ACRP aims to improve the quality of reporting on Africa-China relations through reporting grants, workshops, and other opportunities for journalists. More information at africachinareporting.co.za and our dedicated training website at africachinatraining.com.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the China in Africa podcast, a proud member of the Sinica Network from SupChina. I'm Eric Olander, and as always, I'm joined by Cobus van Staden, the senior China-Africa researcher at the South African Institute of International Affairs in Johannesburg, South Africa. A very good morning to you, Cobus.
Good morning.
Cobus, today we're going to talk about coffee, and coffee is a really fascinating subject in the China-Africa relationship. And let me take you back to 1989, and that was the first time that I went to China. Back then, I was studying in Taiwan as a student, studying Mandarin, and then I had a winter break, and we had a particularly long winter break of 4 or 5 weeks, so I wanted to go up to China, and we had some friends who were staying in Beijing. And before I went to Beijing, I called them up and I said, is there anything from Taiwan that I can bring you? Because back then, the supermarkets in Taiwan were much better stocked than they were in Beijing. And the family said, if you could bring us some coffee, that would be really such a treat. So I thought, okay, coffee, sure, fine. Now, let me remind you of what 1989 in China looked like. This was a time when they had no Starbucks, they had no supermarkets, really. Food was still given out as part of ration books and these coupons that you had to go. There was really no color in China at that time. Everybody wore either brown, black, gray, and it was a very different China than it is today. Unrecognizable, totally unrecognizable. So I get up to Beijing, and I give 4 tins of Yuban coffee. Yuban's this American brand of freeze-dried coffee. And I remember the grandfather who I was staying with, he literally started to cry. And it's an incredible moment because when you think about it today, when you go in Beijing, there are Costa coffees, there were Luckin coffees, and there's Starbucks all over the place. And the idea that anybody would cry over coffee is just absolutely inconceivable. Today, China's coffee market generated $11.5 billion in annual sales. This is a market that's expected to grow 10% a year over the next 5 or 6 years. Coffee consumption is increasing at an annual rate somewhere between 15 and 20%. And how far we have come since 1989. In fact, China is Starbucks' second largest market, second only to the United States. Right now, there are about 4,200 stores across the country, and they're hoping to add another 1,800 stores in the next year or two. Think about that. 900 stores a year, that's almost 3 stores a day in one country. I mean, it's just phenomenal. But most of that growth is happening in the big tier 1 cities, what we call the Beishang Guangshan, so Beijing, Guangzhou, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Tianjin. That means that the rest of the country, the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities, these are the inland cities, for the most part, don't drink coffee. And in many ways, coffee is a very interesting drink in China because unlike, say, the United States, where coffee is the everyman's drink, and tea in some ways is considered a more elitist drink, in China, it's the opposite. Tea is the everyman's drink, and coffee is considered an urban elite drink. And so as that now moves into the countryside and into the suburbs and into the tier 2, tier 3 cities, it's going to be interesting how quickly that market can expand. Now, I want to give you a little flavor of the coffee market in China and the potential and why it's so important for countries in East Africa who want to tap into this huge market. Last May, Taobao, or Tmall, which is Alibaba's online shopping platform, they did a live stream to sell coffee. Now, in China, live streams are a really popular way on Taobao to sell things. They have a video with a celebrity, and they kind of pitch it like a QVC style type of shopping thing. So they put up 3,000 bags of Rwandan coffee weighing around 1.5 tons. And they said, we're going to put this up for sale and we're going to see what it's like. And this was all part of Alibaba's Electronic World Trade Platform. That's a program that they have to bring goods from Africa into China. Ambassador James Kimonyo was on hand, as well as internet celebrity Wei Ya, who hosted the event. Now, here it is in Chinese. I'm going to play it once just so you get a flavor of how fast 1.5 tons of coffee went. 4, 3, 2, 1. They're now open. And sold. That's it, Cobus. 1 second. 1 second. And 1.5 tons coffee went. Now you can see why people were so excited to say, we want to do more of that. Really interesting. And it shows you the enormous potential of selling into the China market and what it looks like in real life, not just in that virtual context. But there it was, Cobus, a second, and it was all gone.
Yeah, it's really amazing. You know, 'cause it really shows the size of the Chinese market, and the way that once Chinese consumers latch onto something, that it changes the kind of global economy for that product.
Well, let's take a look at Uganda. And Uganda is really keen on tapping into that same potential of the market that Rwanda benefited from in that Taobao promotion, where they sold 1.5 tons in just 1 second. Uganda exports to China about $40 million of goods last year, and these are according to UN figures. Fruits, coffee, tea, spices, the usual things that we see coming out of a number of different East African countries. Interestingly, imports from China, $1.35 billion. So you see an incredible imbalance in the trading relationship between Uganda and China. So 40 million sold, 1.35 billion imported. Lots of room to make up there. Coffee is by far one of the most important exports. It generates around 20 to 30% of the country's foreign exchange earnings, and they feel that there's a lot of upside to selling more to help close that trade deficit that they've got with China. And then there's been a recent push by the government to develop coffee exports with the goal now of increasing exports to 20 million 60-kilogram bags by 2030, which is 5 times the current amount. The people who are going to try and make that happen are joining us today on the line from Kampala. Franda Tumukunde is a Kampala-based farmer who is also the chief marketing officer of Doorstep Foods in Uganda. A very good morning to you, Frandon.
Good morning to you, Eric. Thank you for this great opportunity.
Yes, and we're also joined by Dr. Emmanuel Liamulemye, who is the managing director of Uganda Coffee Development Authority, which is a government agency that promotes the Ugandan coffee sector. A very good morning to you, Emmanuel.
Thank you, Eric. Good morning, everyone, and I hope you had a good cup of coffee, especially if it was Ugandan coffee.
Here in Vietnam, we don't have Ugandan coffee, so after we talk about China, we're going to have you talk about maybe coming down to Southeast Asia as well. It's a tough market here in Vietnam to sell coffee simply because Vietnamese coffee is also especially very, very good. But Emmanuel, let's start with you. You work at the Ugandan Coffee Development Authority. Your job is to help get Chinese consumers to really enjoy that taste of Ugandan cup in the morning. Tell us a little bit about how you are going about entering into the China market. What's your strategy?
Uganda is coming in China in a very big way, and I want to assure listeners and viewers that in a few years we'll be testing Ugandan coffee, and we are doing it in a very simple way, but rather thought-through strategy. Uganda first came to China in 2003 through a joint venture with China, a Chinese company, and we've run lessons over the years how the system works there. We have had some setbacks, but also we have had some lessons to learn from. Right now, we have just completed a coffee promotion strategy for China. how the Ugandan coffee can penetrate in China, and we believe working with the Chinese, we can be informed on how we can do it better. But also with the coffee roadmap, which is the Ugandan coffee strategy for increasing coffee production from 3.5 million bags to 20 million bags by 2030. It has also been informed by restaurants worldwide how this increased production can be factored in also in terms of the markets. And for China, we are looking at a structured demand whereby we offset the imports, as you rightly mentioned, by our exports. Can we, for example, work with between China and Uganda and mention about some of the goods which are coming from the state-run corporations can be offset by exports of coffee to China? With those kind of preferential treatments through bilateral agreements, we believe this can happen. We have, for example, a similar strategy that is happening between Tanzania and China, where the Chinese are saying they need cassava for their starch industry. So whatever is being produced as cassava in China, rather in Tanzania, is having a market in China. So this is the kind of discussion we are looking at, where government to government can discuss about this structured demand to offset the imbalance of trade, and also where as government we provide that opportunity for our Ugandan coffee exporters to take advantage of the growing demand of coffee in China.
Brandon, kind of as a farmer, one can definitely see the potential here. But what are some of the challenges that Uganda faces in getting its coffee to the China market?
The biggest challenge here has been financing, because as farmers down here, they are mostly affected by the middlemen. These guys buy coffees at cheap prices in the village, and they sell at exorbitant prices in the city. So if the farmers are financed well, here we're going to solve that challenge. The other challenge is bad farming practices, but now that UCDA as a body came in hand, they have partnered with these lead farmers, and they are teaching them about good farming practices.
So when we talk about the challenges, the other thing that comes to mind is just the enormous scale of the Chinese market. And entering into a market like China and building awareness for your product is very, very difficult simply because it requires a lot of money. Emmanuel, how are you going about spreading awareness about Ugandan coffee so that people know about it without having to spend tens of millions of dollars like other products do in the China market?
Eric, we are looking at 3 ways, and just to remind you that actually Alibaba, Uganda was the first to contact Alibaba, and at that time their interests were a bit different, and we've learned lesson that we have to be persistent and consistent with our strategy. But what we are looking at is online platform. We know the big population in China are the youth. The youth are affluent, and they are using more of online marketing tools. They are nearly all the Chinese youth have the mobile phones. They can access the internet, and therefore, if we look at the social media, we look at the internet connectivity, we can do a lot of online trading, online advertisement, and try to simplify what is more trending for the youth. So those are the kind of marketing tools that have come in from the strategy by the Chinese working with us.
And do you, like Rwanda, have a deal with Alibaba to do something like what they did on Taobao?
Well, of course, like I said, we lost an opportunity. We should have done it better. But what I can also inform you is that Uganda has the biggest volume of coffee growing up compared to Rwanda. And our focus is on specialty coffee, the high-end coffee, the premium coffee. So, yes, Rwanda has taken advantage of the online trading with with Alibaba, but considering the growth they have, the growth in the cafes in China, they won't be able to satisfy the market as Uganda would do. So we are running from those lessons, and we are trying to look at different platforms, not just the Alibaba. We can look at even the programs like WeChat, which are used by every Chinese youth and other people. We look at other trading platforms coming up and other online trading tools. So, yes, Alibaba happens to be the great Amazon of China, but we don't think, we believe it was one of the trials the Amazon, rather the Alibaba had with on coffee. And since Rwanda, as a small country, small volume, has succeeded, we think if we knock on the door of Alibaba, they can readily agree, especially considering that Ugandan coffee is now ranked number 3 in the world in terms of quality. So once they start learning about the uniqueness of Ugandan coffee, we believe Alibaba can open for Ugandan coffee. And also considering that we have big volumes, we have very good coffee, they could be sure that we can consistently supply their market and meet their demands.
Brandon, Emmanuel mentioned so some of the kind of regional competition. Obviously, Uganda is in being in East Africa. Uganda has quite a lot of competition in relation to coffee, but like Kenya, Rwanda, and Ethiopia are all famous for their coffee. Can you talk a little bit about how Ugandan coffee is different, and then how you guys are planning to market it to build the brand of Ugandan coffee compared to all of the other countries in East Africa?
Thanks, Cobus. For Uganda coffee, Uganda is the birth of Robusta coffee. So that itself makes it different from other African coffees. And the other thing is Uganda is well placed according to the topography. The equator line passes here, and with all this high altitude that we have in Uganda, we are producing very nice coffee. And then for the strategy on how we are penetrating into the market, personally, my strategy has been simple, and I've been using referral basis. I sell to a client, then a client refers me to another client. But at the end of 2019, I managed to partner up with a few Chinese here who are trading online, like on Tmall, Taobao, Pinduoduo. So we were looking at how we can expand this to reach mostly in first-tier cities in China. And then the beauty about it is that China itself has a growing population, and which is 500 million people who are projected to reach in 2015. These are middle-class people. So this is entirely just less than Africa's youth population. So with this kind of people, we are looking at how we are seeing a positive. We are going to be. We are seeing at a very good roadmap, and we're going to penetrate this market, especially on online.
And Brandon, you have had the chance to spend quite a bit of time in China. You've gone back and forth between Uganda and China. And I'd like to hear about some of your personal reflections of when you are in China and you see the market changing and you see places like Starbucks everywhere and Costa, and up until recently there was Luckin Coffee, but you see a coffee culture really taking shape in the tier 1 cities. What do you tell people when you're on the ground about Ugandan coffee and where you're from and the farmers? Tell us some of the personal stories you've had when you're on the ground in places like Shanghai.
Personally, the first time I went to China, I thought China was just like Kampala because I had never stepped in China. I just went on the internet. I Googled about the youngest coffee markets in the world. So I got myself in China, and I thought it was just a small city, but I was shocked to their consumer preferences and the taste of the coffees, because previously these guys were drinking teas, but they are shifting to drinking coffee. And for every 100 meters, according to the cities I went to, I was seeing a Starbucks coffee shop. So what I tell these people back home, especially my farmers, is to plant more coffee and practice the very good farming practices. And the other thing is I also tell other young people, like my generation, to go and plant more coffee, because farming back home was more for the poor. They think if you're a farmer, you're poor. But now we are seeing it. We are seeing changes. We are seeing more people going back to farming. So we're likely going to have more produce on the coffee side. And my message to them is let them plant more and more coffee, because the market is there. It's huge. And I've seen this with my eyes, and I can assure we're going to penetrate in these markets.
Support for this podcast comes from the Africa-China Reporting Project at the Wits University Journalism Department in Johannesburg. The ACRP provides reporting grants, workshops, and other professional development opportunities for journalists. Follow the ACRP on Twitter at Wits China Africa, or visit africachinareporting.co.za.
Emmanuel, can you talk a little bit about the kind of breakdown of the different kind of coffee products that you're planning for the market? Like, is at the moment, is the bulk of it unroasted beans, kind of, and then being roasted on the Chinese side, or are you guys also roasting and grinding and exporting it in that form as well?
The current strategy for Uganda is threefold. One is specialty coffee, looking at the high-end markets. That means very high quality premium coffees. That is on one hand. But we also have a segment of commercial coffees, which are for the normal, the average consumer. But our main strategy is the high-end coffee, specialty coffee. And then we are also looking at the roasted and ground coffee. This to us is the main focus we want to be pushing, so that we benefit the farmer who is producing the coffee. If we can have a cooperative or a few farmer groups which are exporting roasted and ground coffee, could make money coming directly to the pockets of the farmer. So we are in this, and we are really looking at how we can support the private sector, penetrate that market by value addition, and which will give ultimately the farmer a good place in the global trade.
So let me understand this a little bit more, because the conversation that's been going on a lot right now in terms of African exports, not just to China, but to many parts of the world, is what can be done to move African commodities up the value chain. So more of the wealth is captured on the African side rather than on the destination as to where it's going. So you're saying by roasting the beans and processing the beans, that adds more value and goes into the pockets of the farmers, rather than sending raw beans to China and let them do the roasting and where they capture more of the value. Do I understand that correctly?
That's correct. But I also mentioned about the category of the specialty coffee, which is, yes, green beans, but which also attract very high price premium. And this we are working with the Yunnan Coffee Exchange, which is another alternative to the New York and London futures, a platform which is going to be targeting, which will be another alternative to them, which will be even if you're exporting green beans, it's very, very high-end market that you are targeting, and therefore we are looking at, as much as possible, maximizing the value for the farmer.
For those of you who are not familiar with Yunnan, it's a province in southern China, and they've got a coffee exchange, much like there's a cocoa exchange in Hunan province in Changsha. So these regional hubs are becoming increasingly important for African commodities. Coffee in Yunnan, cocoa in Changsha.
Yeah, and one should also mention that they are, kind of displacing, or symbolically displacing these traditional hubs for trading. That used to be mostly be located in the US and Europe. Franklin, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that as kind of the emergence of these kind of exchanges in China. Like what kind of effect does that have on the coffee economy in the world, and kind of like do they offer kind of additional options for farmers like the farmers in Uganda?
I would say for these exchanges, it's a very big win for Africa because these guys are introducing trading in non-resource products, and mostly they're encouraging value addition. So this China-Africa cooperation is going to be good, and more if these guys can, like I was talking to one of those guys, if they could extend finance to here in Africa, and it goes down to this farmer other than these middlemen who take who buy the coffee and gain more, then it would be a very big benefit to our farmers down here. But it is very commendable on my end.
Brandon, you keep coming back to the farmers, and I know that the farmers is a very important part of your personal mission in all of this. So you're interested in the business side, you're interested in China, but you're also interested in Uganda's small-scale farmers and helping them succeed. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of the China market and opening up this opportunity for expanded sales of coffee into China, and what impact that would have on farmers at the personal level.
I would say, according to statistics from International Coffee Organization, the coffee consumption in China has been growing at a rate of 16% per year. And China being the youngest coffee market, this is like the new El Dorado for Western brands. So on our side, if we can have these 500 million people, the middle class people taking our coffees, the cosmetic consumption of our coffees will lead to sustainable development here in the country.
Emmanuel, Franklin mentioned that one of the challenges faced by Ugandan farmers was kind of reforming their farming practices, and we also see that particularly on the high end and in the coffee market, there's increasing kind of emphasis on particular farming methods with certain people, for example, emphasizing shade-grown coffee, and kind of highlighting the kind of ecological benefits of responsible coffee farming. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about changes that you're seeing coming in the farming methods followed by Ugandan farmers.
There are a number of changes we are having here. Actually, you came in when we are discussing in Uganda. We have a national coffee platform where the last Thursday of every month, as coffee stakeholders, we discuss about the practices, what we have learned, and how we can improve each other. So this is what we are moving forward to. One is that we have realized because of climate change that shade-grown coffee has a particular unique taste, but also it is a mitigation to climate change. And this is increasingly coming in. Traditionally, coffee is grown intercropped with the banana, plantain, but also coffee is grown as, especially Robusta coffee is grown as a forest crop. So we are also looking at some of the shade trees which we can intercrop with the coffee, which comes with some unique taste and aroma. But also we are looking at productivity per tree, where farmers are increasingly looking at the pruning, stamping, and also good harvest and post-harvest practices. That increasingly is increasing production and productivity per tree, but is also increasing the quality of coffee produced by the farmer. So Uganda has come up with a new coffee law, which is emphasizing from crop to cup. And therefore, as Uganda Coffee Development Authority will be supporting and facilitating the farmers, the private sector, and also the buyers and exporters to actually look at coffee as an origin crop. We are going to be profiling farmers so that farmers know, the buyers know the source of coffee, which gives them confidence in that traceability system. We are also facilitating the the geographical indication system, which we know is a good trading tool for the farmers and the buyers, so that they have the connectivity. They know how this coffee has been produced and what conditions. So we, as a government, we continue also to look at certification, organic trade, fair trade certification, and also the Rainforest Alliance certification, which are the private sector-led certification schemes that provides a lot of confidence to the buyers and roasters, but also eventually adds in more premium prices to the farmers. So we are looking at it in totality as Uganda Coffee Development Authority on how we can support the farmers, how we can also ensure that the buyers who are buying from the farmers increasingly have the confidence in the coffee based on how it is being produced.
I'd like to close our discussion with a look towards the future and where you hope Ugandan coffee will be in China over, say, the next 5 and 10 years. So, Emmanuel, let's get you and your forecast, and then also to you, Frandon, on what you're hoping will happen in the next 5 to 10 years. First to you, Emmanuel.
We want to have Ugandan coffee in every, especially in the 5-tier cities. We want to have Ugandan coffee in every prominent chain there. In Costa, in Starbucks, we want to have the presence in the market in each of these stores. But we also want to make a presence in China in a more unique way, that Ugandan coffee is differentiated from the rest by being a top coffee in terms of taste, in terms of quality, in terms of also consistency. So as Uganda, we are moving in a very strategic way. We won't be going massive, but we will target where the big consumers are in those big cities. We are also in discussion with the China government on some of those areas where Ugandan coffee can enjoy the preferential kind of export quotas. For example, the collaboration with the Yunnan Coffee Exchange, which will be a unique platform that will make us available in most of these unique high-end markets in China.
Frandon, let's get your forecast for what you see coming in the next 5 to 10 years, especially from your experiences on the ground in China and what you're talking about with farmers in Uganda.
In 5 to 10 years, I see my coffee brands spread across the Asia Pacific, not only China, but South Korea, Singapore, Russia, and many other countries. Also, I would love to see, I see my coffees on every biggest coffee shop in China, online coffee shops. I'm talking of Pinduoduo, Tmall, JD, and even the ones that are yet to be developed. I would also love to see my coffees in all first-tier cities, talking of all corners of these coffee shops, from Costa Coffee, Luckin, Starbucks, and other Chinese brands.
I love the excitement there. That is ambitious, because that's a big market. And if you're even remotely successful, it's going to suck up every coffee bean that's in Uganda, simply because China is such a big market. So we wish you the very best in all of the success. I can't wait till I can travel back to China again once we're allowed to. And I am going to look for Ugandan coffee and going to tell everybody about Ugandan coffee. The two people trying to make this happen, Dr. Emmanuel Liamulemye, who is the managing director of the Uganda Coffee Development Authority, a government agency that promotes the Ugandan coffee sector, and Frandon Tumukunde, who also, by the way, wrote a fantastic article on the China-Africa Project. Can Ugandan coffee be the next coffee success story in China? I will put a link to that in our show notes. Frandon is the Kampala-based farmer who is also the chief marketing officer of Doorstep Foods in Uganda. Thank you both for taking the time to join us today. Very quickly, Frandon, if people want to find out more about Ugandan coffee and where they may be able to find it in their own countries, where can they go to find out information about you and Ugandan coffee?
Currently, our coffee is on Taobao, and we're also spreading across other cities like in Shanghai, Dongguan, Shenzhen, and I'll share the link for Taobao to you. And also, if you're in Guangzhou, we also have an agent in Guangzhou who is distributing our coffees, and we are looking at starting roasting fresh more coffees from China end.
Frandon, Emmanuel, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you too for hosting us.
Welcome.
Cobus, you really can't understand how big this market is until you actually have lived in China. It's one of those things where if you read statistics and you read news reports and data, you just can't get it. But when you are at a Starbucks in downtown Shanghai and it is 20 people deep and the money just keeps coming in, it never stops. The scale of this market is enormous. And that's why I said at the end, if they're even half successful, that means every coffee bean in Uganda is now dedicated to China, nowhere else. Now that would be great for Ugandan farmers, but it's also, success can be a challenge too, just, managing the supply chain for all of that. It sounds like they have a very good understanding, though, of the China market, where they're not focusing on China, the country. They're focusing on those tier 1 cities. Again, that's Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Tianjin. Those are the major tier 1 cities. And then within those tier 1 cities, they're going for that upper middle class segment of the population. So they're not trying to go for China writ large, but a very, very small slice of that market. Frandon's a guy who really knows his way around. That's very encouraging to see. And to me, it's exciting because this is what I hope the future of the China-Africa relationship is about trade, about opportunities, about investment, about creating new value, about empowering people. This, to me, just gets me so excited.
Yeah, me too. And also, all of those good things that you mentioned, but also, the fact that this is an Africa-specific crop, it's a high-value crop. It's one where Africa already has a kind of a well-established, kind of image of excellence. African coffee is some of the most sought after in the world. And, I really want this agricultural sector and similar agricultural sectors in Africa to kind of get the love and the respect that they deserve, and for all of this to be able to be run sustainably with good agricultural practices and employing lots of local people. So if it works well, it will be an amazing kind of outcome, I think, for East Africa.
Yes and no. I don't fully agree with you that this is an Africa-specific crop. Africa is definitely distinctive in the market, but I am living in the country that exports more coffee than anyone else in the world except Brazil. Vietnam is the world's number 2 coffee exporter. There's amazing coffees out of Indonesia, the Sumatra blends. Brazil is the number 1. South America has an enormous amount of varieties and choice, and they also are all competing to get into the China market. So I think we could have done the exact same show with somebody from Ecuador or Chile, and I'm just making up names of South American countries here because I think they all also want a piece of the market. And you have to have that market knowledge that Frandon has in order to succeed here. Countries like Brazil, they do that. They export in the volumes that China can absorb. So here in Vietnam as well. So it's a very competitive landscape. Africans do not have this market to themselves by any means.
Yeah, that's completely correct. And of course, China is growing its own coffee at the same time. However, I think if I'm correct, I remember reading that Ethiopia is the first place where people started roasting coffee and kind of processing it in the way that we know it now. So there is kind of a really deep legacy of not only coffee production but also coffee culture, coming from East Africa. And I think it would be an amazing thing if East African countries can kind of tap into that legacy as well and find ways of marketing that legacy as well.
Something very interesting crossed the news here just this week in Vietnam that relates to the conversation we're having today. So Trung Nguyen, which is a local coffee brand here, the number 1 coffee brand, in fact, in Vietnam. They are opening now their own coffee shops around the world. So they've just opened up a new coffee shop in, I think it's called King Cafe in Southern California. Of course, that makes sense because there's a large population of overseas Vietnamese. But we talked about moving up the value chain. So not only has Chongyuan they've been exporting for many years the raw beans, they also export their own brand, and now they're getting into actual coffee locations. And they're not going to be a competitor to Starbucks. The idea is they want to create a Vietnamese experience in a place like California, in Paris, in Berlin. And I think there's something very interesting to that. And I'd like to see maybe if we talk about African countries like Uganda moving up that value chain rather than just providing the raw beans or the roasted beans, but maybe getting into real overt branding of the beans, the experience, and then maybe one day having a few boutique coffee chains just again to really rally people around what this experience is and why it's different.
Yeah, 100%. And exporting the culture and kind of educating people about the culture and then kind of replicating that culture in other cities. That ends up, I think, being some of the highest value things one can do in this field. And for the Africans to be able to pull that off would be a massive coup.
Listen, if you are interested in these topics and you follow China-Africa relations, you're going to want to consider a subscription to our website. We literally archive every story that goes and crosses the wire. Over the past year, we've got now 2,000 stories in the archive. So if you're doing research, you want to have an index of everything that's happened in the China-Africa relationship, this is definitely the place for you. Cobus and I also are doing analysis on things like the agricultural trade. We've been publishing stories every week on the agricultural sector in the China-Africa relationship. It's a deep dive and analysis that you simply will not find anywhere else. We're super proud of that. We'd love for you to try out a subscription. Try it out for 30 days, see if you like it. Plus, we'll throw in, you get the daily newsletter for free, but really you get to come to the site, you get to read the analysis, follow our news feed that we update every single day, and it's a great way to follow what China's doing, not just in Africa, but also throughout the global south. So that'll do it for this edition of the podcast. Cobus and I will be back again next week with another show. Until then, for Cobus Van Staden, I'm Eric Olander. Thank you so much for listening.
Discussion continues online. Head over to facebook.com/China Africa Project to share your thoughts on today's show. Or follow the guys on Twitter. Eric's at Yolanda, and you can find Cobus at Stadenesque. For more information about the China Africa Project and to sign up for our free weekly email news brief, go to ChinaAfricaProject.com.